Just days ago, a little-known airline stunned the industry with a $4.4 billion jet order no one saw coming. Avelo just became the first in America to bet everything on Embraer's E2, while giants like Boeing and Airbus are booked out for years. If this gamble works, it could finally crack open the locked network of U.S. aviation, connecting overlooked cities in ways rivals can't match. But why would a young airline risk so much on jets no one here has ever flown? Let's pull back the curtain on the high-stakes move that could upend everything. Avelo's announcement landed like a thunderclap across the aviation world. The airline, not yet 5 years old, signed a deal for 50 Embraer E195-E2 jets, with options for 50 more. At list prices, the order totals $4.4 billion, a sum that dwarfs the company's own market value and instantly more than doubles its current fleet size. No other U.S. carrier has ever committed to the E2 as a mainline jet. Until now, Embraer's largest planes found homes in Europe, Asia, and South America, but never cracked the American market above the regional category. With a single signature, Avelo became the U.S. launch customer for Embraer's flagship, stepping out of Boeing and Airbus's shadow and into a new partnership that could redraw the airline map. The scale of this move is hard to overstate. For a carrier that started flying in 2021 with just a handful of used Boeing 737s, betting billions on a new aircraft type is a wager that demands attention. The agreement isn't just about the 50 firm orders. The option for 50 more jets signals intent to build an entirely new kind of airline, one that could reach 100 planes if the bet pays off. Industry insiders compare it to the moment JetBlue picked the Airbus A320 in the late 1990s, but with even higher stakes. Embraer, for its part, has spent years searching for a breakthrough in the U.S. mainline market. The E2 order from Avelo is more than a sales win. It's a validation of the jet's design and a direct challenge to the duopoly that has defined American skies for decades. The partnership is public and bold. Embraer's CEO called the E195-E2 a game-changer for airlines that want to grow profitably while elevating the guest experience. Avelo's founder Andrew Levy put it plainly: the E2 fits perfectly with our vision for Avelo's unique role in the evolution of U.S. air travel. This is not a cautious step. It's a full-scale leap into uncharted territory. An airline betting its future on a jet that until now had never flown for a U.S. mainline carrier. The question now is what this order unlocks, and why Avelo believes the E2 is the key to a new era of American aviation. Andrew Levy didn't appear out of nowhere. Before launching Avelo in 2021, he spent years shaping the playbook for American low-cost airlines. At Allegiant Air, Levy helped turn a struggling regional operation into one of the most profitable carriers in the country, not by copying the big airlines, but by sidestepping them entirely. Allegiant's success came from flying older, smaller jets into airports the majors ignored, connecting overlooked cities to vacation destinations, and keeping costs ruthlessly low. Levy's approach was simple: go where the giants won't, use the right tool for the job, and never overextend. When Avelo took flight, the strategy looked familiar, but with a twist. The airline started with just a handful of used Boeing 737s, focusing on point-to-point leisure routes from smaller airports, places like New Haven and Burbank, where big airlines had pulled back. By 2025, Avelo's fleet had grown to 22 Boeing 737s. But the core idea stayed the same: serve markets that others left behind. Levy's background gave Avelo instant credibility among industry insiders. He knew the risks of chasing scale for its own sake. And he understood that the U.S. market punishes carriers who try to fill too many seats on routes with thin demand. The Allegiant model proved that right-sizing, matching the plane to the market isn't just smart, it's essential for survival. That experience shaped every decision at Avelo, from route planning to aircraft choice. As competitors doubled down on ever larger planes and crowded hubs, Levy's team looked for a different path. The decision to bet on the Embraer E195-E2 wasn't just a leap of faith. It was the logical extension of everything Levy had learned. With a track record of making unconventional ideas profitable, he was prepared to gamble on a new kind of jet, confident that the right size and the right network could change the rules of the game. The American map looks deceptively open, but for airlines, it's a maze with few shortcuts. Unlike Europe, where dense clusters of cities and airports make direct flights between small towns routine, U.S. geography stretches thin. Most population centers sprawl hundreds or even thousands of miles apart, separated by mountains, plains, or empty sky. The distances alone force airlines into a system built around hubs, giant airports like Atlanta, Dallas, and Chicago that act as sorting centers for millions of passengers a year. For decades, this hub-and-spoke model has dominated. Travelers from smaller cities funnel through a handful of major airports to reach their final destinations. It's efficient for airlines trying to fill big planes, but it leaves entire regions with few direct options and long layovers. The numbers tell the story. In the US, the average flight clocks in around 2.5 hours, often connecting cities that, in Europe, would be a quick non-stop. Major low-cost carriers, Southwest, Spirit, Frontier, rely on high-capacity jets to make the math work. These planes need a steady stream of passengers to turn a profit, so they stick to routes with proven demand or funnel traffic through their own mini-hubs. That leaves smaller airports and thinner routes stranded. Even as demand exists for direct flights between mid-sized cities, the economics rarely add up. Filling a 150-seat jet day after day between two towns with modest traffic is a gamble most carriers won't take. This isn't just a matter of convenience. It's a structural constraint that shapes who gets direct air service and who doesn't. The U.S. network's reliance on big planes and centralized hubs has created a patchwork where some cities are spoiled for choice and others are left with a single daily flight, or none at all. The result? Missed opportunities for thousands of travelers and a market hungry for a different approach. 9 seats. That's the gap between Avelo's current Boeing 737-700s, which carry 149 passengers, and the new Embraer E195-E2s, seating 140. On paper, it sounds trivial, barely a row and a half. But to aviation analysts, this difference is the fulcrum on which entire business models pivot. In the world of thin routes, those connecting smaller cities or serving seasonal demand, every seat is a calculation. The fewer seats to fill, the easier it is to reach break-even, especially when daily passenger numbers hover just above 100. For decades, U.S. low-cost carriers have been locked into a game of scale. The math behind a 149-seat jet demands consistently high load factors, often 80% or more, just to cover costs. Miss that target by even a few points, and red ink seeps into the ledger. On routes with modest demand, that means flying half-empty planes or abandoning service entirely. The 140-seat E2, though, resets the equation. It lets airlines match capacity to actual demand, not wishful thinking. Industry veterans point to the break-even load factor, the percentage of seats that must be filled to cover operating expenses. For the E195-E2, that threshold drops to around 68 to 72%. For a 737-700, it is closer to 74 to 77%. That is not just a statistic. It is the difference between launching a new route and shelving it. Markets with 130 or 140 daily travelers suddenly become viable. Instead of chasing volume, Avelo can focus on profitability, picking off city pairs that bigger jets cannot touch. This is not just theory. Internal route simulations run by Avelo's team showed over 100 new city pairs where a 140-seat jet could turn a profit, while a 149-seater would bleed cash. Analysts call it right-sizing, but for smaller airports and overlooked communities, it means the difference between direct flights and no flights at all. Key West International Airport sits at the edge of Florida, its single runway measuring just 5,076 feet from end to end. For most modern jets, that is a hard limit. Boeing 737s, even in their lightest configurations, need more concrete to get airborne safely with a full load, especially in the heat and humidity that define the Keys. The result is a bottleneck. Airlines either fly half-empty, pay steep penalties, or skip the market entirely. Key West is not alone. Dozens of U.S. airports, from New Haven to Monterey, face similar constraints, short fields, tight curfews, and limited gate space that keep them off the mainline carrier radar. The Embraer E195. E2 changes that equation. Certified to operate from runways as short as 5,000 feet, the jet's advanced takeoff system, E2TS, lets the autopilot handle rotation precisely, squeezing every yard of performance out of limited pavement. This means Avelo can schedule flights from Key West to regional hubs or vacation hotspots without leaving seats empty or cargo behind. Embraer's own test data, backed by recent FAA documentation, confirms the E2 can depart Key West with a commercially viable passenger load reaching as far as Houston or Atlanta under typical conditions. This is not just a technical footnote. For travelers in places like Key West, it is a direct line to more destinations, more often. No need to backtrack through Miami or Orlando. For Avelo, each short runway unlocked is a new market with little competition and strong local demand. Airports that once saw only propeller planes or the occasional regional jet can now host full-size, fuel-efficient mainline flights. The E2's short field capability turns geography from a barrier into an opportunity, connecting overlooked cities to the national network and rewriting the map of who gets direct service in America. Hidden inside the E195 E2's sleek design is a set of performance tricks that Embraer's engineers have spent years perfecting. The most talked about is E2TS, an automated takeoff system that hands over the critical moment of rotation to the aircraft's computer, not the pilot's hand. With E2TS, the jet can push right up against its performance limits, squeezing every foot of runway into usable lift. At places like Key West, where the pavement runs out at 5,076 feet, this makes the difference between a profitable full load and an empty seat penalty. The system does not just help the E2 get airborne safely, it lets Avelo carry more passengers more often on short runways that ground larger jets. Embraer's test data shows that E2TS can add several hundred nautical miles of range from these constrained airports, opening up city pairs that were impossible with older technology. But the real magic happens in the fuel tanks. Embraer claims the E2 burns up to 10% less fuel per seat than Boeing's 737 MAX 7, a jet that on paper is its closest new generation rival. Independent analysts peg the real-world gap a bit lower, between 5 and 8%. But even the conservative numbers tell a powerful story. The E2's custom-designed wings, lighter airframe, and modern engines work together to deliver a cost per seat mile that undercuts both the 737 and the Airbus A220 on the routes Avelo wants to fly. For an airline built on thin margins, that efficiency is not just a line on a spec sheet. It is the fuel for a new business model, one where every saved gallon means another city can be connected profitably, and every dollar not spent on jet fuel is a dollar that can keep fares low. As fuel prices swing and competitors struggle with heavier, less efficient planes, Avelo's E2s promise a cost advantage that is both immediate and durable. The technical edge, once hidden in engineering papers and test reports, now becomes a lever for reshaping the economics of U.S. air travel. Boeing and Embraer took two very different roads when designing jets for this market. The Boeing 737 MAX 7, intended as the smallest in the MAX family, carries the weight of its bigger siblings, literally. Boeing built the MAX 7 by shrinking the larger MAX 8, but kept much of the same structure and systems. That decision saddles the MAX 7 with extra weight and drag, making it less efficient than it could be. In contrast, Embraer tailored the E195-E2 from the ground up for its size. Every major component, from the wing to the landing gear, was designed specifically for the E2's 140-seat sweet spot. The result is a jet that's lighter, more aerodynamic, and purpose-built for shorter routes and smaller airports. While the MAX 7 struggles to deliver real savings on thin routes, the E2's bespoke design gives it an edge where every pound and every seat matters. For airlines trying to make small city flying profitable, these engineering choices are not just technical details. They are the difference between a viable business and another failed experiment. Avelo's ambitions rest on a fragile foundation. The airline's first quarter 2025 load factor slid to 71.7%, well below the break-even point for most low-cost carriers. Each empty seat cuts deeper into margins, especially when rivals are fighting for the same passengers on established routes. The financial side of the E2 order is just as complex. Rather than buying outright, Avelo has arranged a mix of direct purchases and operating leases, spreading risk across several specialist lessors. Some of the funding may even involve export credit support from Brazil, a move designed to keep upfront costs low and give the company flexibility if the new model struggles to deliver. Pilots, represented by ALPA, are already in talks with management. Switching from Boeing 737s to Embraer E2s means retraining, new type ratings, and questions about pay scales. The union wants guarantees that pilots will not lose out as smaller jets enter service. For Avelo's finance and labor teams, every decision is a balancing act between growth and caution, innovation and risk. The next few years will test whether their gamble holds or unravels under pressure. Avelo's countdown to 2027 isn't just about getting new jets. It's about seizing a rare head start. While giants like Boeing and Airbus face order books stretching into the next decade, Embraer's open production slots mean Avelo's E195-E2s will arrive years ahead of any rival's new narrow bodies. The first aircraft are scheduled to land in early 2027, giving Avelo a clear runway, while competitors wait until at least 2030 to see fresh deliveries. This window is more than a calendar advantage. It's a chance to carve out new markets before others can react, flying direct routes between smaller cities that have never seen mainline jet service. For Avelo, the early arrival isn't just a logistical win, it's the foundation for a new business model. The E2's size and efficiency let Avelo launch profitable service on thin routes that bigger airlines can't touch, and do it at a time when no one else has the right jet to follow. If Avelo can prove these routes work before the rest of the industry catches up, it could set the template for a new era in U.S. low-cost flying, one built on access, not just scale. Right now, Avelo stands alone, set to introduce the Embraer E2 where no U.S. airline has dared. As major carriers struggle with overcapacity and delayed fleets, Avelo's move could force the entire industry to rethink what's possible from America's forgotten airports. The next era of low-cost flying may not start in a hub city, but on a runway no one thought mattered.